Welcome to Commander Central, episode 121. And today we're going to be taking a look at changes we made to our decks using cards from both Modern Horizons and Core Set 2020. I'm Dana.
And I'm Max.
And despite our promise to have Chris here this week, we got a text from him about an hour before the show saying he had rented a skid steer, I believe.
Yep, a skid steer because he's fixing his new lawn for their housewarming party.
So that seems like a perfectly valid use of a get out of podcast free card, I think.
Dang you, house owners.
Yeah. I have never personally rented a skid steer, but that's a pretty good reason, I think. So he will be here, though, for the deck tech we're going to do on Sunday. So he'll be back for that, assuming he doesn't rent some other kind of large piece of machinery.
Can hope. We know, ignore what Dana said. You can just wait till Thursday to find out if he shows up.
Find out. So, how's your week so far, Max?
Pretty good.
Jumping back in from your vacation?
Yeah, it's same stuff, different day.
That's never easy.
Yeah. What about you?
So my wife she didn't go for the full trip to Michigan. She came back because she has a trip for work, and she just needed some time in between trips to kind of decompress a little bit. So she was back at our house by herself for a while, and she did a ton of yard work. She wound up. We had a tree removed in our backyard, and then it's where the water that came in that flooded my garage. We took a bunch more stones out, and she wound up excavating down a foot of soil, so the water then drains down versus there being anything there to hold it in place, and planted a bunch of plants and basically made a rain garden right there. It looks really, really good, and it was a ton of work, but there was a couple things that weren't finished. So last night she said, let's just run to pick up she didn't even specify what we need to go get.
That's never good.
Right, yes, that's kind of the point of this story. And I didn't ask.
Smart.
So we go to the home improvement store, and I park, and she's like, why are you parking over here? The stuff is all down the garden center. I'm like, yeah, but we'll just go in and get the SKU numbers and then drive back into the yard and pick everything up in my car. No sense of lugging those bags around. She's like, no, let's just go get it.
Oh, no.
All right, well, that's okay. So then I moved my vehicle over to the garden center, and we walked in there and grabbed a cart and pulled it over. I'm like, okay, what do we need? She's like, well, I want to get 6 bags of pea gravel. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, we should have just brought the car back here rather than lug these 6 bags of pea gravel.
This is 50 pounds each.
This is already a poor use. We should have just done what I suggested. And she's like, yeah, I guess, whatever, fine. Let's just do it. And I'm like, all right, okay. So we're here. At this point, we're here. It makes no sense to go back and get and
right.
backtrack. So we throw the bags on the cart, and I'm like, all right, is that it? And she's like, well, we also need 10 bags of mulch. And I'm like,
wait a minute.
And I'm like, what? And she's like, whatever, I guess yes, we should. She's like, I'm like, all right, so we wheel this big sledge we have with all these bags of pea gravel over to the mulch, and of course there's an employee there on a forklift, and we start throwing bags of mulch. She's like, you guys can just go get the number and pull it in. The look she gave him
could kill
was
someone.
Amazing. And he, he's like, yeah, we know, we turn to leaves, and she's turns on, she's like, don't say a word.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, it was, it was less hilarious as I'm loading up the bags of mulch and then having to reload them in my car when I could have just done it once.
And then taking them out of your car.
Right, but it was fine. So that was my amusing story from this week coming back from my vacation.
Yikes.
She did a really nice job in the back, however, so I guess that all kind of washes. How about any fun games this week? You play anything fun?
I played 4 games this week.
You played some games with Chris, I believe.
Yeah, he actually came and played EDH.
That was surprising.
Yeah.
Wearing the Commander Central shirt.
Yeah.
So how'd those games go?
Pretty well. He played Mogus for 1 game.
I heard somebody talking about having to deal with a Mogus and a Mana Barbs and something else on the field all simultaneously.
Yeah. He played it kind of slow because I was playing Dramoka. We had a Gyrus deck at the table and I think a Lazav deck.
Okay.
Lazav 2.0. And it kind of came down to the point he played a Niv's disc, thinking, okay, I'm either going to deal with Max, because I had a huge board state. I had a Resplendent Angel out and Dramoka, and I was just making tokens every turn. It was great. But then the Gyrus player Chaos Warped the Niv disc before it could untap.
Okay.
And Chris got a land, and he looked at me and he said, you're not going to lose this game. Because how are you going to deal with Max?
Right.
And he's like, oh, no, I'll figure it out.
Did he figure it out? Spoiler?
No.
He did not figure it out. Okay. So Dramoka blew that one up, I take it.
Dramoka lost to Lazav.
Oh, at the end? Okay.
I ran out of gas after like digging for a board wipe, found it, dug for something else, found it. I did have a cool play where I played a Mirage Mirror. Cop made it Lazav and had enough mana to turn the Mirage Mirror Lazav into a Baneslayer Angel to block the 2/3 flying hexproof Death Toucher from Ravnica Allegiance or something.
That was going to kill you?
That was going to kill my blockers that are just me, yeah.
Sure. Nice. Well, those plays always feel good when you like find those like that deep buried sequence of things you can do.
Yeah.
I had some pretty good games. I played, like, we didn't play at all even.
No.
I didn't see you or Chris. I had some pretty good games. The last game of the night was kind of an interesting one. I borrowed someone's deck. So I borrowed a Niv Mizzet deck to try something different.
Red, blue, 5-color.
Niv Mizzet, it wasn't Draco Genius, and it wasn't the newest one. The newest
so the middle one.
Yeah, the second one, I think, which is...
Firemind, Ingenious, or something?
Firemind. It was Firemind. So I borrowed that deck, and I really didn't know what it was, if it was just good stuff or what was going on, so I just played it out. I didn't look through the deck. And like turn 6 or 7 or something, I top deck a Narset, and I'm like, okay, Narset,
the good
new planeswalker.
The good Narset.
So I played Narset, and everyone of course was like, oh, nice, and I do my minus ability on Narset
to dig
and hit a Windfall.
Oh no!
And I'm like, well, it's not my deck. I'm like, you guys can't blame me for this. So I cast the Windfall. Luckily, someone had a Swan Song to counter it.
Nice.
And, I was like, oh, well, I deserve what happens to me. I pass a turn, and no one can kill Narset. I had enough things up. Comes back around to me, and I top decked a Corvus Fury, which is also a
wheel.
A wheel, and I'm like, well, let's see if anyone has a counterspell this time, and I got it off.
Oh no!
So everyone discarded their hand and drew one card, and I drew my full
7. Or that plus
whatever
1.
It was, yeah. Back up, and of course, like I still got to say, hey, it's not my deck. the pieces are just here. I'm just doing what the cards tell me.
Exactly.
And of course, I immediately then got killed as soon as everyone was able to get cards back. So that seemed like a fair thing. But I got killed. I went to close my tab up because it's like midnight or something, getting ready to leave, and I walked back over just to see if the game was close to ending, just in time to see the Lazav 2.0 player turn Lazav into who's the black legend that when it deals damage to you it kills you?
Phage.
Turn it into Phage and kill one person.
Bad touch.
Yep. And which is always a good way to see somebody die. So it's down to the Phoenix Mill player and the Phage Lazav player. And so the Phoenix guy taps all his creatures and mills hits Phage for, I think it was 21.
Okay.
And this is at the end of the Phage player's turn. Comes back to the Phoenix player. He plays, it was a Jace that you can force people to draw with. I forget which
Party
one.
Jace.
So he makes everyone draw a card.
Jace Bellerin.
Yep, he makes everyone draw a card. Then does this tap thing.
Mills them for another 21.
Mills them for another 21. And the Lazav player is then down to 1 card.
Okay, so he has a turn.
But there's a Dictative Crucifix in play.
Oh no! Wah, wah.
Yep. And there's literally that's all he can do is those mill effects. And the Jace was a top deck, and that was what turned the corner. The 1 card from the Jace.
Wow.
And having the Dictate in, and passes it to the Lazav player, who's like, I dead, and that just kills me.
That's awesome.
Because he has no way to deal with the Phage coming through then on the swing back. So that was really cool to see. And I also got to play, I put my Asperia deck for the first time in forever.
Oh, wow.
And got to do that thing where everyone's slugging it out back and forth, and it gets down to the end of the game, and it's me and one other player who has the good board position, and I pulled it out with
nice.
End of turn, Sphinx's Rev for 9, and then back to me, and which helped me to from 3 to 12, and then goes back to me, and I'm like, Scroll Rack for 16, because I had a Scroll Rack out after the Sphinx's Rev. I was able to dig down basically what's left of my library and find all the pieces I need. I found Madomi and Lightning Greaves and something else, and I was able to
Nice.
Then turn it into, okay, swing through and hit for, 12 damage, but Madomi triggers the extra turn, and then it comes back to me, and I was able to find enough mana to get like True Conviction down or something, and able to do enough damage to get through. So I hadn't played that deck for a while. That felt pretty good to know it still kind of functions the way it's supposed to function, which is to just hang in there long enough to do stupid Sphinx stuff.
Yeah.
That was a good game. If you want to find us online and tell us about any cool games you played or any adventures you had at the home improvement store with bags of mulch and pea gravel, how would you do that, Max?
You can find us on Twitter by searching at CMDR Central. We're also on Facebook at CMDR Central. YouTube, CMDR Central. That's where you're going to find all of our shows, the audio, and soon you get to see our beautiful faces.
Absolutely. I think we also have some new Teespring designs up. Or will they be up by the time this goes live?
They will be up when this goes live. We have our catchphrase shirts are up.
I can't remember the exact wording. There's definitely the trash card one for Chris.
Let's see if I can pull them up quick here. So Chris's says, "What do I think?" Trash card. Mine says Scumbags Unite.
Nice.
And Dana's says high floor, low ceiling.
All right. I like them. So those will be available, and we also ordered ones for ourselves for upcoming GPs and Magic Fests kind of events as well.
Yep, so we'll have multiple different designs for each one with, we'll do a dark-colored shirts with white text and light-colored shirts with black text.
Very cool. You can also find us on flipsidegaming.com.
Head over to flipsidegaming.com and use promo code CMDR in all caps to get 10% off all your orders, $10 or more, and they are pre-ordering Commander 19 full set.
All right, nice.
Which our code works for. You can also grab all these M20 cards, our Modern Horizons cards that you are still looking for.
And I think we have some Patreons to announce.
Boy, do we ever. This is what we get for taking a couple
no kidding.
double recording weeks here. So we want to say thank you to, first off, all of our patrons, but especially the new ones from the last couple weeks. So we have Objector, Matt Jorgensen, Tyler Herzberg, Robert Clark, Joshua Wade, Kevin Newman, Mark Bridge, Nick Cooper, Adam Garrett, Mads Blim Landor, Conrad Curtis, Peter Vander Velden, Sam Jovic, Sam Neal, David Voss, and Kyle Ducharme.
Wow!
I think I only screwed up two of those names.
Even if you didn't, you sounded like you knew what you were saying.
My coworkers thought I was weird pronouncing these all day long.
So you actually practiced.
No.
Good on you. So yes, thank you very much for supporting us. We really do appreciate it. It means a lot and helps keep the lights on here in the Dungeon of Doom.
Yep.
Anything else we need for final business here? We have a few contests.
There we go, contests.
There we go. I knew we had one more thing.
So for Twitter, we're giving away that lovely oversized two-headed giant. Two-headed dragon card, not giant. You could probably use it in two-headed giant.
Yes, probably.
It's going to look weird sticking out of your deck, but you know what? That's your opponent's problem.
Right.
So we'll be giving that away. Retweet the tweet when you see that. I'll probably post that for the first time this month after we're done recording.
Okay, all right.
Because this is what Max forgets to do things.
All right.
We're also, for all of our patron supporters who are continuing to support us or start to support us by the end of July, we're giving away a bundle of Core 2020.
Yeah, yes indeed. And for a core set, a surprisingly good-looking core set.
Yeah, sure.
I did not make the pre-release. We discussed it on the deck tech we did. You didn't either.
Nor did I. Chris didn't either.
The shop didn't even have any extra pre-release kits to sell.
You know, and I think that I'm going to give credit to the fact that they can start them at 3 o'clock on Fridays.
So that makes a big difference. And I'm going to probably try to start going to them at, if not the 3, like the 6 or like
the 7 o'clock. I think they did 3, 7, midnight, 1, 5, midnight, and they did 2 on Sundays. Or maybe the store finally axed their midnights now that they could put 2 in on Friday.
Yeah, that is definitely nice. I like being able to go to that one at 7 o'clock on a Friday. It would be much, much easier.
That's probably my plan going forward, is to do the 7 o'clock on Fridays. Feels like I'm going to F&M, but it's better.
Yeah. And we also got some announcements this week about where you would get the Soul Ring, the promo Soul Ring that was released last week. So there's a foil and a non-foil of it. And I'm not sure if it's only going to be available at Vegas, but that's the first place you can get them.
Yeah.
One is available if you sign up for the Commander Party. I think that's the
non-foil.
That's the non-foil, and the foil is if you sign up for the
Commander Zone area.
There we go. Yeah.
Like kind of what SCG Con does, and all Channel Fireball events has finally, caught on to all the positive
Yes.
feedback about that type of thing, and probably the negative feedback from players, the casual players saying we get moved every 10 minutes
Right.
when we play EDH at a Magic Fest, or any other format that is not
Right.
the main event or side event. So yeah, I believe, personally speaking, I will be in the command zone area along with the party.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try to do it as well. Not that I will definitely go out and play other games too,
Yeah.
but like I just think it being able to sit and play games and know that I not have to worry about moving around is really, really useful.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you also get the non-foil one if you do the Commander Fanatic package.
Yes, I believe
which gets
so.
you like the dozen entries into
Yep.
pods and stuff and a bunch of other stuff.
And there's a few pods, I think, with the Command Zone one as well. You get a few on-demand
You
pods.
get some on-demand pods.
So I'll definitely have a few of those that go do with folk as well. So it's 5 weeks away now or so? About?
39. We leave in 39 days.
Jeez.
It's not. I haven't been counting for 2 weeks.
Well, I'm starting to get to the point where I'm like ready to go now. I'm really looking forward to
I'm
it.
always ready to go back to Vegas.
It's a really, really good time, and I would suggest if you can make it, you should make it. It's
Yes.
a lot of fun. So, yeah, we're getting pretty close to that. We also have a couple bans and one non-ban to discuss. And we're not going to spend a lot of time on this because it's been...
A week by the time this airs.
Yeah, it'll be a week late, and it's been discussed ad nauseum. But we kind of haven't discussed it, really, actually, you and I.
Not really.
So we'll discuss the unbanned first, which is Painter Servant. What are your thoughts on Painter Servant, Max?
I mean, if it was still in the format with one of the cards that got, well, maybe both cards that got banned.
Yeah, maybe.
But Iona more than Paradox Engine.
Yeah.
It is extremely painful because right there, that's a lock.
Right.
I do like the explanation with the new philosophy document put out by the Rules Committee and
Yeah.
the CAG and whatnot.
Yep.
You know, the janky stuff that they think Painter Servant will be used for, or hope Painter Servant will be used for. You know, I understand it. It is cool. You
Yes.
can do those cool, weird circle protection tricks now and whatnot. Compost is kind of viable now.
Well, the worst case scenario with Painter Servant without Iona out is you grindstone somebody out of the game.
Yep.
2-card combo, kill one player.
Yeah.
But my response to that is not that I want that to happen, but like Painter Servant on its own, unless you have multiple synergies with it in your deck, doesn't do really anything useful at all.
Nope.
Grindstone, unless you have multiple synergies with it, doesn't do anything at all. So if you want to run a 2-card combo that kills just one person,
Right.
assuming no one has a response, and those 2 cards are not very good on their own, you know, go ahead and do it. Because like you have things like Blood Bond, where both cards are good on their own. You don't even. But
Don't put those on anybody's radar. Those need to stay unbanned.
But the notable thing about those two is like, you don't need to have something like in most decks that Painter Servant isn't going to do anything about that grindstone or nothing like
Right.
game breaking. Sanguine Bond is really good by itself. Exquisite Blood is really good by itself.
Yep.
So like, there's just enough better combos that I'm not worried about that.
No.
And there is a ton of like weird, cool, janky stuff. None of it I'm doing. Like I'm not gonna put it in my decks.
I don't plan to.
But there's decks where I can imagine running it.
It is an artifact creature.
For sure. Yeah, but the problem is, in that Vela deck, I don't want to give things color because
Right.
part of the thing is I want to be able to swing through with artifacts that can't be blocked because they have
And
Intimidate.
everything turns into that color. So
right.
yeah,
I thought that was the first thing I thought was clear, right? In Vela, and I'm like, oh no, I
That-
absolutely don't want it in
that's a
Vela.
Nambo.
Yeah. So that's a good unban. It's one of the ones like when we had talked about when Command Zone did their Commander Summit and we recorded a little segment for it. The card we suggested unbanning, that bit didn't get aired, but it never occurred to me to suggest Painter Servant.
Yeah,
Actually,
I believe we talked about Raphelios.
we did. And since it didn't air, we might as well. Our argument was Raphelios isn't necessarily any better than Selvala.
Yeah.
If not, maybe worse than Selvala.
Yeah.
And she's legal, so like I don't know if Raphelios would be a problem. But regardless, we never even thought about Painter Servant. I looked at Painter Servant, I'm like, well, it's definitely broken. But if you think about it, it isn't. Really.
Right.
Actually, DJ at Jumbo Commander had Painter Servant as his unban, and he had, I think, he also had Paradox Engine as a suggested ban, and maybe Iona. I think he might have like been 3 for 3. I think he was definitely 2 for 3.
Tinfoil hat time.
Right. Or he just knows stuff.
Sure.
He's just a smart dude. It could be
Sure.
one of those, either one of those two.
Probably both.
So Painter Servant we think is perfectly logical. I wish I would have thought of it. How about the two bans? We have Iona, which we kind of already had touched on
Yep,
here.
that's fine. Bye-bye. Get out.
Now, I think I've seen Iona cast once ever. Have you ever even had one cast against you?
I've had multiple cast against me.
You have, okay.
I've had the painful mana for it, because
Okay.
it's turn 20 in the game.
Sure.
And that I was fine with.
Sure.
I've also had the turn 2 Iona come down and ruin a game.
Like an animate dead
yeah,
or something?
an entomb to animate, reanimate,
Okay.
and boom.
That's no fun.
So I've been on both ends of it. It sucks. Iona causes for bad game experiences when it's cheated out so early.
Yeah.
And which is easy to do in Commander.
It's not a broken card.
No.
It's not overpowered. It's just one of those cards where there's like no situation when Iona comes down when it doesn't kind of ruin a game for somebody. So why have it in the format? It just doesn't. It
Right.
brings nothing positive. So especially based on what their redefinition of their ban list was in their document, it seems consistent with that. And I feel like, honestly, there's just not that many decks around it anyway. It's just not a huge loss. Even if maybe it wasn't a card I worried about, just it wasn't a big loss. The big one, however, will be Paradox Engine getting banned. No one should be surprised that Paradox Engine got banned. If you were shocked at that, you haven't been paying attention.
Right.
There's definitely been calls for it to be banned since it was basically the day it was spoiled. I've not seen a ton of Paradox Engine, but I've seen enough. And I've seen a lot of bad Paradox Engines where someone takes a 15-minute turn and doesn't win the game. And then the next turn, you're like, are you going to be able to win the game? And they're like, well, we'll see. And they don't, too. That's the problem with Paradox Engine. Not that it's a card that can win. I think it's a card that cannot win while still taking forever to not win.
Yeah. I think we don't see a lot of Paradox Engine in our shop. Or we hadn't
Yes.
up until the ban. Because I think our shop is pretty good about the fact that, cool, I'm going to do it 2 times.
Yeah, yes.
And it wasn't fun to win that way because everybody
So
sat there for 10 minutes and watched me combo off with 1,000 different cards, and I won the game.
Our shop really does a fairly good job, I think, of kind of following that.
Rule 0.
Yeah, where people do their thing and are like, okay, well, this isn't a good time for anybody, so I'm pulling it. And they self-regulate very well that way.
Yep. But I kind of said this in our Slack because everybody started talking about like, oh, do you guys see a lot of Paradox Engines? I said, we don't see them at the shop, but out in the wild, you see them everywhere.
You do, for sure.
At every Magic Fest we've gone to this year so far, you see Paradox Engines just because it is a good card.
It's a great card. And you don't need to necessarily build around it either. If you're just running like 10 Mana Rocks in your deck, which is some people do
Say
that
that's
just
the
on
number.
average.
Yep.
It's a great card.
Yeah.
But it's also a super dirtily card a lot of times.
Yeah.
So I think that I would guess that was probably part of the logic, is not that it's overpowered, but it's powerful and can also be just a
Broken.
game killer where it just drags the game down and doesn't actually win a game. I think they don't want that. And again, similar to maybe the Iona ban, I get how it's maybe not healthy for the format. Now, the CEDH crowd is a different deal.
Right.
Because they resolve it and win a game. And it's a tool in that deck, and it's maybe properly balanced at 5 mana, and those folk know how to use it, and it's a different situation there. But I still think the most important part of the game is the non-CDH player base. It's just much larger, and I think it's a problem in a lot of those pods and a lot of those tables and a lot of those shops. And while it sucks if you're a CEDH player to lose it, I get it. I'm not saying it doesn't suck. But I think it's a logical removal for the greater Commander game as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
So, anything else on those?
No.
Rift survived.
Woohoo!
I will say this. I will launch a prediction now. Rift is gone within a year. I feel like they didn't want to drop a bunch of bans at once or a bunch of unbans at once. My guess is going to be we see an unban and a ban every 6 months for the next year or 2. They're going to slowly fix the ban list. Like they've got input from the CAG. I would bet they've already decided some cards are coming off and going on, but they didn't want to do like 5 are going on, 5 are coming off all at once. So
Interesting.
I would bet we lose Rift down the road. I don't have any guesses or anything else, but I bet we do lose Rift. So
Okay.
We will revisit that down the road and see if I'm correct.
Yes.
I think that's it for non-main show topic stuff.
Works for me.
All right, let's talk about cards in our decks and things we're adding and removing that were in both Modern Horizons and Core Set 2020. And would you like to start us off, Max?
Yeah, so I think I'm just going to start with all my Modern Horizons cards.
Okay.
So the first one off the bat is one we really didn't touch on in our review show because it's just a good card, and that's Generous Gift.
Yes. So my thought process on Generous Gift, and I'm curious if you are the same way, if I'm running white, I put it in the deck.
Every single one of my EDH decks has white in it.
Okay. I guess they do. I didn't think of that. They do.
3 of the 4 got Generous Gift.
Which one didn't?
Barago.
Okay, well, you have a lot of control stuff, and you have a lot of
Yes.
counter spells in there.
I planned to put one in there, and when I finally broke the deck down and, laid it all out and
Sure.
looked on deck stats, I'm like, the way this deck plays, I would rather just have a counter spell. And that's what I would have ended up removing for it. Would have been something like Render Silent or, a counter spell where I'd rather just counter that spell and not even have to worry about it hitting the battlefield.
The deck, I had the toughest problem finding a room for it. It was in my Asperia deck, which is also Azorius, because between counter spells and white has great removal anyway.
Right.
I did have a tough time finding a spot for it, but I did find one.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
But no, otherwise it went in Dramoka, Regninkrov, and Tuvasa.
Yeah, I mean, it's Beast Within. And Beast Within is amazing.
Yeah.
So Beast Within is one of maybe the best, maybe one of the 5 best targeted removal spells in the format, and so this makes it one of the 6 best, I guess, at this point.
What I like about Generous Gift is for the people who can't afford something like a Path to Exile, because that's a $15 card, or a $10 to $15 card.
And when they reprint it, it drops to 10.
And it goes back up within a year.
It doesn't drop to 2, it drops to 10 from the 12 or 15 it's at. So yes, that's always pricey.
Generous Gift, it's a little more mana, but it still sort of does the same thing. It destroys a permanent. So it does a little more in the sense that it can hit a planeswalker or a land, where Path only hits creatures.
Right.
But at the same time, the mana difference, and you're giving them something back, and it's a destroy clause, so it might not be strictly better, and we don't say strictly on the internet.
Right.
But it is, I think it's a very good substitute for the newer players who can't get a Path to Exile.
Did you figure out what you're pulling it for yet?
I pulled it. All my decks have it in already.
Okay.
I would have to go through my change log.
You didn't write down what you pulled.
I didn't.
Okay.
No, it was one of those like, well, this is 3 mana, and I don't like this card, and this is 3 mana. Swap.
All right.
I mean, I did that when the set came out, so I wasn't thinking this far ahead to this show.
Yeah, because we had talked about doing this. We had done this once for a show. We had planned on doing it, but like by the time we said we wanted to do it again when we got feedback, I think we were already started making changes and maybe hadn't written them all down.
Right. I mean, and there's been 17 sets in the last 4 weeks, so
you are not wrong. Where's the lie?
Been a lot of.
I will just. I'm going to touch on one thing here briefly before we get any further. We got a cycle of lands in Modern Horizons, the Horizon lands, which are basically enemy-colored version of Horizon Canopy, and we got a Prismatic Vista, which is a not quite as good as the fetch lands, but better than every other fetch land, basically.
Yeah.
I'm not going to mention any of those. I did put those Canopy lands into any deck that could run them, and pulled out either a basic or I wasn't running Guild Gates, but whatever the worst land in my cycle was at that point in time. And I put Prismatic Vista in anything that was 2 colors or more, or I am planning to anyway, picking them up slowly every other week at this point because it's still a $20-some card. But I'm not going to mention that for every individual one of my decks because there's like 6 Prismatic Vistas I want to putting in decks and I think 3 Canopy lands. So I won't touch on those specifically. Did you wind up adding many of those?
So I put the Canopy, the black-white Canopy land into Regninkrov.
Okay.
And that's it.
Do you think, so how much do you like those lands?
I mean, I like pain lands, and this just draws me a card.
Right, it's a pain land that you can crack through a card.
Yeah.
And you're at 40 life,
I got to play it last night.
Okay.
I didn't crack it for the draw. I just used it as a pain land, and it's Regninkrov, so I'm gaining that life back. I don't care.
Right.
To be honest, I think I'm going to cut the black-white temple for the Caves of Koilos, because that's what I cut. I took Caves out for this card.
Because the logic, for testing, it's a logical swap.
And they're functionally the same card. Where I think Regninkrov is still at that point where it's still pretty slow.
Okay.
I'd rather put Caves back in, knowing I can gain life in that deck.
Right.
Versus having that temple come down and take the temple hit.
Yeah.
Coming in tapped, whether it's turn 1 where it probably doesn't matter, but even turn 3 or 4 with that deck, it slows that deck down by 2 turns.
Sure. That makes sense. Yeah, I've been gradually filtering out the temples too, and actually I think I wound up pulling 1 or 2 temples for
These lands?
for prismatic vistas.
Oh.
I think in allied colors and in enemy colors, I think I pulled a temple too for one enemy color deck. So yeah, I've been swapping those in and out as well. Okay, anything else specific here?
Yes.
I suppose there's probably quite a few because there's a lot of good cards in these sets.
Yes. Sarah, the Benevolent.
Okay, I was going to add one, but I've not got around to it yet.
So shout out to one of our listeners and patron supporters, Jim Dean. We actually he had a foil Sarah
nice.
that he opened, and we worked out a nice little trade. So I traded him some cards I had, and I needed to send him a worm coil, and I realized the only worm coil I have is in a deck, and it's actually not in great condition.
Okay.
So I'm like, well, here I've sent half from my collection, and the other 2 cards are coming from Card Kingdom.
Okay.
And he's like, that works for me.
All right.
So that got slotted into Jamocha, like we've talked about in a past few shows.
Have you gotten it out yet in a game?
Have not gotten it out yet in a game, but it's going to be fun when I do.
Someone actually was asking me today, I can't remember where it was, we were talking about, and they asked if I thought it was any good. And my response is, I don't know if it's good, but it's also not bad. And I think it's on theme enough in enough decks, and it's fun enough, and it's also Sarah that I think that maybe makes it okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those cards that you're like, yeah, I could definitely find something probably strictly better than this, but I want to have some cool cards. It's fun to run fun cards.
Yeah, it's awesome, and the art is amazing with the window
Yes.
to make it look fully extended.
All right, what else?
My last one is Hall of Heliod's Generosity.
Yeah.
So I was hyped on this card because when it got spoiled, Tuvasa was pretty new still. So I put my first copy into Tuvasa. The night I did, I got to use it to grab an aqueous form back to the top of my library, which ended up helping me win the game because I could draw it off of whatever I played with Tuvasa out, drew aqueous form, played that, and swung in for lethal to kill the last player.
I actually saw it used this week in a game. Somebody hull breach to kill a Divine Visitation and then something else. And the player who had Divine Visitation came to their turn. They played the Hall of Heliod Generosity, put the Divine Visitation back on top of their library, and then cracked the draw land, the canopy land, to draw the
Divine Visitation
back to hand and replay it again. I was like, oh, that was awful. I just
yeah, and it was funny. One of the players I was playing with that night, he goes, I want to know how this card works. Like, how many enchantments do you need to get back to make it worth it? And at the end of the game, I said, 1. That's all you need is 1.
Yeah. Because it doesn't come into play tapped.
Nope.
Particularly in a 2-color deck, you can afford to have, 10-ish, if not more, colorless sources and probably be okay.
Yeah. It sucks the activation ability is white, but whatever. All my decks have white in them. But I now have a playset of them, so each deck is getting one because I looked through all my decks. Jamocha bringing back Mirari's Wake.
Yeah.
Regnan and Krav getting Blood Bond back or Divine Visitation.
Yeah, I found, unless I'm intentionally not running enchantments for some reason, I just accidentally wind up with 8 or 10 enchantments, if not more, even in decks that aren't like enchantment decks.
I mean, even in Brago, bringing back something like Active Authority, which the only way I can get that back right now is Sun Titan.
Yeah,
so
I'm actually probably going to put one in my Asperia deck just because it's another way. It's a way to get back True Conviction.
Yes.
Like if I do nothing to bring back True Conviction, it's probably worth it.
For 2 mana.
Yeah, and there's not much downside to it. It's finding that deck, 2-color deck. I can afford to have that colorless source. Yeah, it's worth it. So
I can tell you, in Jamocha, this is the card that is replacing Riftstone Portal.
Okay.
Because I don't run like Crop Rotation or Harrow, so it's pretty rare when that ends up in my graveyard to use it.
I like Riftstone Portal a lot.
So do I.
In theory.
Yeah, exactly.
In practice, it's tricky to sometimes.
It's build-around-ish.
Yes. Yep.
And I don't want to build around a utility land.
And in my Sigarda deck, I do have a Crop Rotation. I don't have a Harrow. And there's been times, on more than one occasion, when I've had I've drawn the Crop Rotation, I'm like, oh, there's Riftstone Portal, and I don't have a Serra Sanctum. Well, there we go. That's perfect.
Right.
But there's also been times when I'm like, I just have this colorless land in play right now that's doing nothing, and literally the only way I can destroy it on my own is Crop Rotation.
Yeah.
Or someone casts someone else gives me an option to sacrifice a permanent or something, which just never happens. So.
Right. And Torment doesn't let you sack land, so...
Right, yep. And I guess you could strip mine your own...
I've done it. I've ghost quartered my own lands before.
I have to... Well, ghost quarter, at least you get to replace it.
Exactly, that's why you do it.
Yeah. See, that makes sense in that one. All right, what else?
Those are my Modern Horizon cards.
Okay.
What about you, Dana?
I didn't divide mine up by Modern Horizons or by...
that's fine.
I just divided them by the commander in question.
Oh, okay. I did that for my core 2020 cards.
So I'll go over my Veil of the Nightclad deck first. I added in Master of Replication, which we discussed on the previous show. That's the instant that lets you turn all your artifacts into a copy of another artifact or make 2 golems. I wanted replacing Imprison in the Moon with that just because I was kind of desperate for a swap, and it's an artifact deck, and I wanted to run less enchantments. I love Imprison in the Moon, but again, I'm adding at least 1 enchantment to the deck that I'll mention here in a few seconds, so I'm that's just a logical one to remove for me. So I pulled Imprisoned. I might wind up missing it down the road, but I did also just recently add in both Pongify and Rapid Hybridization. So I did add 2 creature removal spells, so it's not like I'm running nothing. I put in Scrapyard Recombiner, which is the creature that lets you sacrifice an artifact to search your library for a construct and put it into your hand. And I didn't really think much of it until multiple days after the card was spoiled. And I was like, I wonder how many constructs are in the game, because I wanted to post a tweet about it. So I went and did a search to see how many there were. And as I'm going to go down the list, I'm like, oh, I have that in my Vela deck. Oh, I have that in my Vela deck. I'm like, oh, Metalworker's a construct. Oh, this is a construct. And I wound up having 11 or 12 constructs in that deck, of which 6 of them are genuinely good.
Nice.
And I'm like, okay, well, there's way worse things to do than sacrifice a treasure to put a counter on that and go get a Metalworker to hand, or go get a, whatever else it would have been. I'm putting that in the deck. I have not got it out yet, but I wound up replacing Steel Hellkite.
Okay. I can see that.
Yeah, the deck isn't really aggressive. I don't really attack a lot unless it's a situation where I'm making a bunch of things unblockable with Veil and I'm killing people. And Steel Hellkite draws so much aggro from people. At least it does where we play.
Yeah.
Nobody wants it swinging in and taking out 3 or 4 permanents.
Nobody wants that.
And I watched a game this week where we had a Angry Omnath deck that was playing, and I can't remember what the other one was, but it was also a deck making a bunch of tokens. And the player that played Steel Hellkite was able to keep everyone in check for multiple turns, just blowing up tokens with Steel Hellkite. So it's a really good card. There's a reason it gets targeted, but I just felt like it wasn't worth the aggro it drew for me.
Gotcha.
And I always lowering my CMC whenever possible too. They'll let me do a little bit of that. The last one I added was Mirrodin Besieged, which is the enchantment that has the 2 modes. I think we discussed it when we reviewed the show. You can either choose to make a construct whenever you cast an artifact spell, or actually it's a mirror, or you can choose to, at the end of your turn, draw a card and discard a card, and then if you have 15 or more artifacts in your graveyard, target player loses the game. I've got it out twice. I think once I chose the Mer mode and once I chose the draw discard mode, and even if you don't win a game with it, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I've been very happy with that card. Either mode is useful, so I'm happy with it so far. We'll see how it shapes up when we talk about this again in September, but I've been really, really pleased with it when I've seen it so far, and I'm guessing that's going to continue. I'll do, I'll do a couple more decks here, and then we'll see what you have for core set cards. My Edric Spellmaster of Trest deck has not seen a lot of love.
That's fine.
In quite a while. But I got a bunch of cards in these 2 sets.
Yeah, he did.
Force of Negation went in the deck and replaced Disdainful Stroke. Force is just more consistent and I can cast it. The deck wants to be really aggressive.
Yeah.
So I have multiple different counterspells I can cast when I'm tapped out. I've got Pact. I do have Force of Will in there. I think I even have Foil, and I ran Thwart for a while, which is genuinely bad, but it was still
and you have delay,
something.
Don't you?
And Delay too, which is cheap, Swan Song. So I want cheap counter so I can be as aggressive as I can, and Force of Negation lets me be very aggressive because I can cast it for nothing. I put in Scale Up.
Okay. Which
is just another way to make all those little tiny, 1/1 flyers and unblockable guys into, is it 6/4s?
Yes.
So basically it's a because Overwhelming Stampede doesn't really work in the deck because it only gives creatures a plus based on your biggest creature. well, they're almost all, best case a 2/2 with Edric. It's just not good enough. Where this case, it just makes them all beaters.
Yeah.
So that's one more win condition on one card, basically. I put in Fairy Seer, which is again a 1/1 flyer with upside, and there's also Spectral Sailor, which was in the core set. Fairy Seer was in Modern Horizons. They're just both 1/1s with some manner of upside. I think Spectral Sailor is a pirate. Fairy Seer is a wizard. So ideally they've been rogues, but that's fine. And I pulled. They're both 1-drops, and I pulled 2/2-drops. I pulled Jessian Infiltrator, and I pulled Tetsuko.
Okay.
So, again, I knocked the CMC down slightly, and in that deck it's already super low. And I got 2 creatures that are, I think, generally more useful than the 2 I replaced them with. And the last deck was my Asperia deck. I mentioned Generous Gift one in the deck. I pulled out Return to Dust. I was kind of trying to choose between Return to Dust, and I also did have Crush Contraband. I left Crush Contraband in the deck and pulled Return to Dust.
Okay.
So we'll see how that works out. I've only cast Generous Gift once, but I know how good Beast Within is. So
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about that swap. And I put in a Tempsis, All-Seeing. And again, I'm very curious to see how Tempsis plays, but I pulled Sphinx of Athun, which is 7 mana for a 6 mana Sphinx, so it was able to lower my CMC a little bit. Sphinx of Athun is fine, but it's not necessarily great. That was an unexciting change, but I want to try Tempsis for sure. So, all right. What did you have, Max, for core set changes here?
Okay, so we're going to start with my Brago deck.
Okay.
Brago is going to get 2 new cards.
All right.
Maybe 3. So, the first one, which is the maybe for Brago, is Agent of Treachery. That's the 7 mana rogue. It's a 2/3. When it enters the battlefield, gain control of target permanent. And then at the beginning of my end step, if I control 3 permanents that I don't own, draw 3 cards. The reason why this is a maybe is it's 7 mana for a 2/3 with no evasion.
Yep.
The plus side is I can at least, if Brago goes out and I can successfully hit someone, I'm getting 2 things on the first turn it comes in.
Right away, you're taking 2 things.
Yep. If I have a Panharmonicon out, that's 3 or 4 things.
Right.
And the plus side is when this does die, I keep the stuff.
They don't go away.
So that's why it's a maybe. Because it's a maybe, I haven't figured out what I would cut for it because all of my 7-drops are just big flying beaters like Azor.
Yep.
Or like Torrential Gearhulk, he doesn't fly, but he's very good at what he does for that much mana.
Yeah, that's what I would like to see in that deck. I'm curious to see how well it plays because I could see it being devastating.
And my buddy has a foil one, and I don't think he's ever going to use it. So worst case, I'll test the foil and bend it or something. My other 2 are going to be Drawn from Dreams. So this is the fixed Treasure Cruise or Dig Through Time, whichever one. Dig Through Time.
Yes.
So 4 mana, sorcery, look at the top 7 cards of your library, keep 2 of them, put the rest on the bottom in a random order. I'm going to be cutting Oath of Teferi for this.
Okay.
So Brago does run 7 Planeswalkers now with the few from War of the Spark. The problem is a lot of those War Planeswalkers are minus abilities.
Right.
So I don't want to do those twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, when Oath comes in, I can blink something or I can exile it till end of turn. That's great. But I've actually never successfully had Oath of Teferi out and a Planeswalker at the same time.
Okay.
And Oath has been out now since Dominaria, so almost a year. So it's a cool card in theory. I just don't think my deck is meant to have it. I would rather be able to look at 7 cards and pick the 2 things that are going to help me progress the game further.
That makes sense.
The final card for Brago is Tail's End. So that is the 2 mana counterspell that reads, but it's not a true counterspell. Come on, there we go. Sorry, everybody. Scryfall's being slow for me. Counter target activated ability, triggered ability, or legendary spell.
So activated ability or triggered ability is pretty useful.
Yes.
And legendary spell seems limited.
But it's not.
It's any commander.
It's Reki.deck.
Any planeswalker.
Artifacts.
Whole bunch of different artifacts.
Sorceries.
Yeah. There's a surprising amount of legendary stuff out there that you don't really think about.
Right. Really, if this is just stopping a commander from hitting the table,
it's probably worth it.
It's worth it. If it's stopping...
If that just said...
It stops a Maze of Ith.
If that said counter target, activated ability, triggered ability, planeswalker, or commander, that might be enough. And
Yeah.
it hits more, and it hits way more than that.
But it also stops, our meta is kind of filled with those Corehaven Maze of Ith cards.
Yeah.
Stops that.
Yeah. At a crucial point in the game when the person thinks they're safe.
Yes. So I'm going to try this out, kind of like I said with Generous Gift. I'd rather just have counter magic in this
Sure.
deck versus destroy. So those are Brago's new toys.
Okay.
Should I keep going?
Keep going.
Okay. So Regna and Krav is getting 2 new toys. We're going to go with Bloodthirsty Aerialist. That's the 3-mana flying zombie vampire, whatever it is. Vampire Rogue. I was close. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on it.
That seems really good in that deck.
It seems good. It doesn't get 1 counter for every life you gained.
Right.
But, I mean, I can gain life on everybody's turn with Krav out and some tokens. And it's just a flying blocker, which I need in that deck.
Yeah.
So
It could be a really big flying blocker.
Yes. So I'm going to try that, and I'm actually going to take out Crested Sunmare. So Crested Sunmare is the 5-mana horse from Hour of Devastation.
Okay.
If you at the beginning of each end step, if you gained life, make a 5/5 horse token.
Yep.
Other horse creatures you control have indestructible. So
Okay.
Crested Sunmare doesn't. Your tokens do. Your changelings do. I've gotten it out a few times. It's fun, but 5 mana is a lot for something that doesn't do something right away. It doesn't have lifelink.
Yep.
Inherently, it's just a 5/5 beater. Where this at least has some evasion and gets bigger and can become a threat. So take this out, or do you take Krav out? That type of thing. It's more of a threat assessment issue.
Okay.
And the final card for Regna and Krav is I'm going to try Dread Presence. So that's the 4-mana Nightmare. That's
Oh,
a
yeah.
3/3. And whenever a swamp enters the battlefield under your control, choose 1. You can either draw a card and lose a life, or Dread Presence deals 2 damage to any target and you gain 2 life.
Draw a card and gain a life, I believe.
Lose a life.
Is it lose a life? Okay,
Yeah.
I thought it was gain a life.
No, it's Phyrexian Arena.
Okay.
This is great because if Urborg is out, all my lands are swamps. I can either draw a card. This also gains me some life, which can trigger Regna.
Right.
It can trigger other creatures in the deck that have to do with life gain. It can trigger Blood Bond. There's so many things that this card can just enable
Right.
by being on the battlefield. So I think it's worth a slot. And I'm actually going to be taking Grave Pact out for this.
Oh. You still have Dictate in the deck? Or is
I have both in the deck right now.
Okay.
I played Dictate this week, but there are times when I just don't want to cast Grave Pact
Sure.
because I'm the only one with creatures on the board. So even though Krav eats them, I'm not getting much value out of that
Sure.
card because people don't play creatures.
That makes sense.
So those are the changes for that deck.
Okay. Is that the last of the ones from the core set?
I have 1 card for Jamoka.
What would that be?
Shared Summons.
Oh, the
tutor.
To get 2 creatures with different names?
Yes.
For
So
5 mana, right?
5 mana, instant,
2 hand.
2 hand.
But instant's a big deal there.
Yes. So, as we've talked about, this is my Jamoka deck's turning more into a control deck. Mm-hmm. So I would rather be able to say, keep a creature on the battlefield. Only play 1 or 2 creatures for as many turns as possible. But when it comes to that key point where I need my Archangel Thune
Yep.
and I need something else,
You can get
boom,
them.
go get them. And I'm going to close the game out.
Sure.
I think I'm going to take the mana, the CMC up on this, and I think I'm going to take Luminarch Ascension out of the deck.
Yeah, you know what? I tend to agree with that. Luminarch Ascension is a great card on paper, and there's absolutely times when you get out early and no one deals damage to you, and you make all the angels in the world, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
There's enough times that doesn't happen, and it does nothing for you.
Yeah.
And not just you. Like I've had the same problem with it
Yeah.
before.
It's great early game. I mean, Chris played my Jamoka deck this week, and he flat out looked at me and said, I should keep this hand because a turn 2 Luminarch Ascension is great because
Yep.
I know I'm going to at least get 1 angel off of it.
Yeah.
But he said that was all I had to go with.
Right.
So I think I'd rather just have something that's going to set me up late game. That's where this deck wants to be, is the late game.
And you don't want to draw that after turn 4.
No.
Really, probably.
No. It is instantly a card that if I don't have a Reliquary Tower out and I need to discard, Luminarch Ascension goes away. Unless I see like I have a board wipe in my hand or something where I can
You're
situationally...
protected.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's pretty rare as well.
That makes sense. I like the thinking. I like hearing the thinking behind this stuff.
Yeah.
All right. A few more of my decks then. I have my Talran deck. I put in Archangel's Charm, which I did discuss when we did a review. I'm replacing Disdainful Stroke. There's just been enough times Disdainful Stroke didn't quite counter the spell I wanted. and I like the flexibility in Archmage's Charm, being able to counterspell or draw cards with it. That makes sense in that particular deck. I put in Merit Lage's Slumber, which is the enchantment that if you have the snow permanence, you make the Merit Lage token.
And you run snow-covered islands.
In honestly, it's not really on theme. I don't know if it's going to be any good, but like it's a perfect slot for it just to try it out. So it's staying in the deck until I make Merit Lage one time.
Okay.
And maybe I'll keep it beyond that. Maybe it'll do it. Like maybe I'll play it in 5 different games, and every time it pops Merit Lage, and it's awesome. But I'm gonna keep it until it at least does it once.
Okay.
Because I want to do it.
And it kind of goes back to that threat assessment. That's a bigger target, in my opinion, than Talrand on turn whatever.
When Merit Lage, when that comes down, and you're like, oh, he's got all snow islands in his deck, and you're like doing some math, like you got to deal with that, or Merit Lage is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's also a good card, but it's also partially because I just want to
do it.
Yeah. And I'm also going to play Winged Words in that deck, which is the draw spell that costs 3 mana to draw 2, but it costs 1 less if you control a flying creature.
Yeah.
So it's just a really, really good cantrip in that deck where I almost always control a flying creature. And worst case is a Divination. It's a 3 mana draw 2. And Divination isn't great, but...
It's no cancel.
It's no cancel. There's worse spells than Divination. And this is going to oftentimes just be a Night's Whisper, but you don't lose life.
Right.
So I'm pulling Spark Double, which is just has not... I don't think it's a bad card, but it doesn't work in that deck.
I can see that.
So that's the logical swap there.
Yeah. It's on the chopping block in Braga as well.
Okay. Next is my Jiru deck. I put in Generous Gift and also remove Return to Dust here.
Okay.
Sarah the Benevolent is going in. I have not got one yet, but I think Gideon, Champion of Justice, is coming out. He's the one out of Gatecrash.
That exiles all permanents.
If you have 15 loyalty on him.
Which isn't hard to do, though.
Well, when it works, it's amazing. You play it, and they're like, that dude's got,
7 tokens, and that guy has 7 tokens, and that guy has 7
tokens. And I've got a proliferate effect, and I've got something that, like, you can do it. But there's been enough times where I've drawn it, and I'm like, this is never going to do anything for me.
Right.
So, whereas Sarah, worst case scenario, makes me an angel every single time. I drop it, make an angel, like, that's it. Like, I can always do that.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to try that swap there once I get my Sarah in. Mina and Den, I had a couple changes. I originally wanted to put a Ren and 6 in this deck. That I will not be doing, because I'm just not going to spend $50 on it.
Well, you could crack one.
Maybe I'll get lucky and bust one from my pack, yeah. And actually, I don't think it's that amazing of a card in this deck.
No.
But I wanted to put it in and try it because I thought it was going to wind up being the cheap Planeswalker. I'm like, because when it was released, everyone's like, boring.
And then Legacy.
And I'm like, okay, cool. I'll grab one for $10 here in a week. And then, 5 days later, everyone's like, well, maybe we'll play this in Modern. Maybe we'll play this in Legacy. Maybe we'll play this in, and now it's $50-some bucks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's clearly not going in my deck now.
And Sarah's the cheap Planeswalker
now
at
Sarah's the cheap.
$11.
I actually ordered a Sarah last night for $9.
There you go.
So, yeah, Sarah's the cheap one now. That's not going in the deck. However, Tectonic Reformation is going in the deck, and I'm replacing a Tunneling Geopede. Tunneling Geopede is one wherever I get a landfall trigger, my opponents all lose a life. I've had situations with that out where, like, I've done, my fetch land into another land, and then use my Mina and Den second landfall for a fetch land into a second land, and everyone's taken 4, and then 2 turns later I've cast Escape Shift and hit everybody for 15 more, and it's done work, and it's also been cast and accomplished nothing.
Yeah.
So I don't like cards that I have enough situations where I've cast them, they haven't done anything.
Okay.
So that seems to be the logical pull there, where Tectonic Reformation should always let me, worst case, pitch a land and draw a card. I mean, I don't know if there's a downside for it. The only thing in this deck I'll be curious about is, because I play multiple lands in the deck, I do have a bunch of ways to bring things back from the graveyard. I have Crucible, I have Excavator, I have
Scape Shift,
Life from the Loam, I have Scape Shift, I have World Shaper.
Right.
So I have like 5 or 6 ways to bring lands back, but I also have 10 or 12 ways to put multiple lands onto the battlefield per turn, including my commander.
Right.
So it's going to be a question of, do I not have lands in hand to use the ability more often than I have a way to pitch a land and then immediately recast it with Crucible?
Yeah.
Because if I have Crucible out or Excavator out,
then you're fine.
That feels amazing. It's basically it's a pay 1 mana, draw a card.
Yeah.
And then immediately recast that land. So that's one that I just have to play it for 3 months and see where we're at.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm also playing Cryptic Cave in that deck. That's the land that you can sacrifice
To make the
draw
zombie?
a card. No, to draw a card.
Oh, okay.
You only do it if you have 5 or more lands. But again, I have so many ways to bring lands back. There's the worst case scenario is I play it and it's a colorless mana source, and I can maybe crack it to draw a card once and that's it. That's the worst. That's the high floor on that one. But the ceiling on that one is, again, I have Crucible out and I can just spend a mana to draw a card off it, recast it, next turn crack it again, recast it with the Crucible. So there's a lot of situations there where it's going to be basically a draw per turn, and multiple repeated landfall triggers.
Yeah.
So that's one I anticipate it will be staying in the deck.
Okay.
I'm also going to put Lotus Field in the deck. That's the land where you bring into play and have to sacrifice 2 lands.
2 lands.
Because there's no downside really to Lotus Field for the most part. It's really tough to blow up. You're mana neutral. You have to sacrifice an amount of lands that make mana equal to what you're putting in play.
Right.
But I'm in a deck where, like we mentioned, I've got a bunch of ways to bring stuff back from that graveyard. So I think there's no downside to it, and there's a lot of situations where that's going to be good upside for me.
Yeah.
My Sigarda deck is getting Season of Growth. That's an enchantment that lets you draw a card whenever you target one of your creatures with the spell. Basically, it's going to work the same as Core Spirit Dancer does and SRAM does in the deck, because they draw me a card when I cast an aura.
Yep.
So this will functionally be the same thing as those. Those are in the deck. Like, I almost never put enchantments on Core Spirit Dancer. I definitely don't put them ever on SRAM. At least she gets +2/+0, I think, or +2/+2 for each aura on her. But they're in the deck 99% of the time just to draw me a card for casting an aura. This is one more, and it draws me a card off of any other Enchantress out too.
Right.
So it's almost a better version of both of those two in that deck. So that's the only thing going on my Sigarda deck. My Glissa deck's got a couple changes. I am putting a Mox Tantalite in there because I currently am back to running the package with Prototype Portal.
Okay.
And it's one more 0-drop artifact I can put on Prototype Portal and tap it for 0 and make a copy of it. So it's going in that deck, at least for now, as long as I'm back on my Prototype Portal nonsense. And Embodiment of Agony is just going in there too. That's the demon that gets +1/+1 for each converted mana cost in your graveyard. And it has Flying and Death Touch.
I was going to say, does it have Death Touch, though?
It does have Death Touch.
Okay.
So, conceivably, by the time I cast it, there's going to be something in my graveyard.
So it's a 1/1, or it could be a 3/3.
Right, worst case, it's going to be a 3/3/1/1, a 3-mana 1/1 with Flying and Death Touch, which is fine. However, it's not. I said converted mana cost. It isn't converted mana cost. It's for each mana cost in your graveyard. So, like, 2 in a black is different than black, colorless is different than black, black. So, like, I went through my deck. I had in the deck.
So that's Necropotence, Read the Bones, and Phyrexian Arena you just named.
Right, and those all hit it in different ways.
Yep.
So I went through and counted my deck. I wound up having like 31 or 32 different mana costs in the deck.
Gross.
So, I would bet very often it winds up being a 4/4 or 5/5 flyer with Death Touch. Sometimes it could be a 10 or a 12, depending on what point of the game it's in. And I'm not too worried about early game stuff in that deck. Like, if I draw it and I'm like, oh, I can't cast it because my graveyard's empty,
well, who cares? Yeah.
And occasionally someone's going to then Bajuka Bug your graveyard and it dies too, but, like, again, that's just going to happen sometimes.
It doesn't die. It comes in with +1/+1
That's true,
counters.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
So it doesn't grow, but it's going to come in as whatever it was.
So I'm curious to see how that plays out as well. I also like the card. I think it's a neat, dumb design, and I want to see how that plays in that deck.
Right.
That's the one I think I have not found what I'm going to pull for it yet.
Okay.
I was leaning towards maybe No Mercy. I like No Mercy a lot in the deck, but like, and when it comes out, people get freaked out and are like, oh no, we need to remove the No Mercy. I don't know if it's that effective necessarily, but maybe it's worth keeping in just because of that reaction. I think people's reaction to No Mercy is way more than it actually is as a danger.
People don't like their stuff blown up.
And it removes the threat of chip damage.
Yeah.
But also, like, it's no good when you draw it in turn 9 or something, and you're like, oh, there's Dramoka and Baneslayer and something else over there. I'm like, Max I'm just going to die. Who cares? He'll lose his creature, but he's going to kill me anyway. So I don't know if No Mercy's that great, but I'll tweak it and figure it out anyway. So that's where those are the changes we're making and the cards we're thinking of pulling if we knew them. And we'll come back to this, I think, in September, maybe right before the next set comes out.
Yeah.
And talk about these changes and reevaluate how the cards went. And I think we're going to try to do this
with every
future
sets. Yeah.
Because like I said, I like hearing how you think and make these changes. Hopefully it's useful for people out there to hear how both of us think as well.
Yeah.
And I would bet, come September, Chris will no longer have that skidster.
I hope not if he has to take it back tomorrow morning.
So,
or we might not have Chris if he doesn't.
That's true. Yeah, he may no longer be... He may be in jail for stealing a skidster at that point. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of Commander Central. We will be back with a deck tech like usual next week. I want to thank our editor, Ken Peddle. You can find him on Twitter at LOAD3R. Our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. You can find me on Twitter at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDRCentral_Max. You can find Chris at WiseSquishy1. We will see you the next 4 days, I should say, not next week.
There you go.
I'm Dana.
And I'm Max.